I work as a new breed driver at night to make a little extra cash. Friday and Saturday nights are always the busiest because everyone's either home or with friends and ordering food, so those were usually the nights I would work. I got a request on a Saturday night at 1 a.m. to pick up McDonald's for a guy named Harold. He lived a few minutes away from my current position, so I punched in the nearest McDonald's, which was like a 2-minute drive away, and picked up his order. It was a small order. I think he only wanted 2 hamburgers. He lived like 5 to 7 minutes away from the McDonald's. I followed the app's directions to the house, and eventually it led me to a short dead-end street that veered off another dead-end street. The house was the last one on this dead-end road. It was right next to a line of trees that ran alongside a highway. Though it was pretty much dead at this hour given how late it was, I didn't want to ring the bell, so I called this Harold guy's number. It rang once, then went to voicemail. So I hung up. Then I got a text from him, though he told me to come to the door, and so I did. I got to the big wooden front porch of the house, and soon the front door opened. A bald guy opened the door, and he didn't look very old. He looked to be in his 30s, yet his head was completely bald. Maybe he was sick or just liked that look, so I didn't judge. However, his breath was disgusting and he seemed to be quite drunk, so that was a little off-putting. The payments were done through the app, so usually there was no need to wait around for money, but this time, this Harold guy asked me to come put the pizza on his kitchen table while he ran to fetch a tip. I didn't object to free money, so I waited in his kitchen, which, by the way, was only lit by a small outlet-sized nightlight, so it was pretty dim in there. The whole kitchen smelled rather disgusting, though I didn't know what it was. Harold was taking awfully long down in the basement fetching this tip, so I started to wander a bit. I stepped into the living room, which was adjacent to the kitchen. The TV was on in there, which was the only reason I could see anything. However, the stench was even greater in this room. Then I noticed that the back door was slid half open. Maybe he was airing out whatever that putrid odor was. For the hell of it, I walked to the back door expecting to get a quick breath of fresh air, but the smell only got worse. Finally, I stepped outside onto the man's back deck. I heard flies, the sound of a swarm of flies right by the door. Then I guess a motion-sensing light saw my movement and turned on, revealing 2 big black garbage bags stuffed with 2 long objects. The smell was unbearable. It took me a second to catch on to what I was most likely looking at. Suddenly, waiting around for the tip didn't seem like a good idea anymore. I went back inside and rushed to the front door, and just then I heard Harold emerge from the basement calling to me. He was holding a few singles in his hand. He saw me as I was about to open the door and asked where I was going. I had to come up with something, so I said I was just rushing to check if I had something in my car. He said, "Oh, okay," as he came over to me and handed me the bills. Then he turned to the back door to the porch where the light was still on. Then he looked back at me with his gummy smile now disappearing. He asked me in a firm voice if I went to his backyard. I told him no, and he just stared at me, not saying anything. I didn't give any more thought to it. I opened the door and walked myself out, but not without him grabbing my shoulder as I got onto the stoop. I yanked his hand off my shoulder and ran to my car. I saw him run back inside with the front door still open. I turned my car on, sat, and watched his front door, curious to see if he'd come back out, and he did. He came back out running full speed for my car with a big metal rod in his hand. I drove away from his house, ready to call the police and report him. I called when I got down the block, making sure to leave him no time to dispose of those potentially dead bodies. I waited down the block and saw police cars pull up literally within 2 minutes. I watched the whole thing as I told the police where to go. In fact, Harold, if that's his real name, had already started moving the bags, which did contain dead bodies, to the bushes in his backyard. Everything about this guy was off. Leaving the back door open to reveal dead bodies to a pizza delivery boy may have been deranged, but he also wasn't the smartest man around. I'm currently 25 years old, although at the time of the story, I was 20. I live in Newark, Delaware, a usually small and quiet town that is until college season rolls around in the fall and spring. Newark is home to the University of Delaware, which is a large and widely respected school in the U.S. It also has a reputation for being a big party school, so when the college kids arrive, things get a lot more lively. Anyway, I work as a bicycle delivery guy at Jimmy John's, a job I still work at as of me telling this story. This event took place during a Tuesday or Wednesday night in the spring, either late April or early May, I can't remember exactly. It was my typical 7 p.m. to 2 a.m. shift. The Jimmy John's I work at is open until 2 on weekdays and 3 on weekends. This means we're one of the few places still open in town aside from the bars, so a lot of drunk college kids storm the place wanting to order. Needless to say, it gets pretty hectic. Deliveries would pop up like crazy, which did get very annoying, but it meant a lot of tips, so I always put up with it. This was my last night working the shift, and just as 2 a.m. was about to roll around, one last delivery came in, and I was next in line to take it. This annoyed me, as I just wanted to end my shift and go home to get some sleep. I sucked it up and took the delivery since I didn't have a choice. I knew the street by heart and knew where to go immediately. I should mention that the reason we do bicycle deliveries is that the roads tend to be busy sometimes during college season, so using bicycles sometimes allows us to do deliveries faster. I rode my bike as fast as I could to the house in less than 10 minutes. I knocked on the door loudly, but there was no answer. I knocked again, louder this time, still nothing. I became a little pissed when I remembered if someone didn't come out, I'd have to take the order back to the store, meaning this delivery would seriously be wasting my time. I called the number on the receipt, but no one answered. I was getting ready to call the store when I first heard it, rustling sounds coming from some bushes directly across the street from me. I figured it was probably the wind, but decided to look anyway. When I did, I felt my stomach drop as a strong sense of dread flowed through me. I saw the dark figure of a person directly across the street from me, in someone's yard, crouched behind a few bushes. Even though I couldn't make out any facial features, I knew that I figured it was he was looking right at me. My heart was racing, but it didn't seem like he noticed that I noticed him. I pretended to not notice him and knocked loudly on the door again. Still, there was no answer. I began to grow more and more panicked, wondering whether or not this could be a trap. I did a quick glance, and the person was still crouched behind the bushes, watching me. I just wanted to get the hell out of there, so I decided to just continuously knock on the door as loud as possible until someone answered. It felt like hours that I was knocking, but eventually, someone stumbled out from one of the rooms and sluggishly answered the door, sounding pissed. When I told him about the order, he told me that he didn't order, so it was probably his roommate instead. To my misfortune, the person who actually ordered was upstairs in his room, passed out drunk. How he could have passed out so quickly after he ordered is still beyond me. The guy went upstairs to try and get him. Not even a minute after he went upstairs, I suddenly heard more rustling and did a quick glance back. When I did, I noticed the man had moved a little closer, probably to get a better view of me. I could tell he was still watching me. My fear intensified. I almost wanted to come inside to get away from the man watching me, but I figured he'd steal my bike, meaning I couldn't do my job anymore. Plus, I didn't know if this person was armed and if he would actually try something if I went inside, which would put the two of them in harm's way. Luckily, he was only upstairs for a minute. He said his roommate's door was locked and that he wouldn't answer the door when he knocked. At this point, I really wanted to get out of there, so I told him he could sign for his roommate's order. He hesitated at first since there wasn't a tip charged to the order, but a tip was the last thing I was thinking about at this point. I insisted over and over, and eventually, he signed for his roommate. I handed it to him and gave him a quick thank you. When he shut the door, I hurried to my bike and hopped on, ready to get the hell out of there. But just as I put the kickstand up, I heard the man suddenly lunge out from behind the bushes. I quickly turned to my left and saw that the man was now dashing toward me. I was able to see he was wearing what looked like jeans, boots, and a black hoodie with the hood over his head, and what I think was some sort of mask on his face, as I could only see his eyes. Although I'm not 100% on this, it looked like he was holding a blade in one of his hands. I knew I had to act quickly. I couldn't make a U-turn because he'd probably catch me before I could get away. To make matters worse, all the surrounding streets led to dead ends. My only chance was to head to a bike trail that was nearby. Even though it wasn't lit up and I didn't have a light on my bike, I knew it would be my only chance. I pedaled faster than I ever had before onto the pitch-black trail and rode it, all while looking out for shadows and listening for footsteps. Luckily, the trail wasn't long, and I knew it by heart. Still, I was extremely paranoid by this point and got startled whenever I heard any noise at all. I didn't see the man while I was on the trail, however, and I made it back to the store safely. I was hyperventilating like crazy as I tried to wrap my head around what the hell just happened. I didn't tell my boss or coworkers, nor did I call the police since I didn't get a good look at the man. I simply got my stuff and clocked out and went to my car, putting my bike in the trunk, so thankful I decided to drive that night. I made it home safe without anyone following me, and that was that. I never saw the man again. I don't know what he wanted, whether he wanted to rob me or worse. I haven't worked another midnight shift since then, and now I carry nunchucks on me whenever I do any kind of night shift. New York isn't known for being a dangerous town, so the fact that this happened here truly showed me that anything can happen anywhere to anyone at any time, no matter how safe or dangerous the area may be. I worked for DoorDash as a delivery driver for a short period of time. I made a little bit more money delivering food for them than I did at my first job, plus I enjoyed it more. I really liked how I could put together my own work schedule and work when I wanted. I was a full-time college student, so that was particularly why it was so much more convenient to me than a traditional part-time job. It did come with its consequences, though. One being this creepy guy I ran into that I'm about to tell you about, and two, how I used to have to make deliveries late at night, which was a horror story on its own. I wasn't scared, I just heard horror stories about delivery drivers over the years getting mugged, hurt, or even disappearing after working late at night. So sometimes, I would be on edge if I had to deliver in a sketchy or unfamiliar area. Sometimes, I had to deliver to houses that were in the middle of nowhere, like Serial Killer Central. Around 5 p.m., I was finishing up with my studies. And I decided to take a rest. I laid in bed for a bit while I watched TV and fell asleep for a few. I woke up after a short 30 minutes, looked on my phone, and realized that I had fallen asleep. So I got up, took a shower, ate something real quick, and then off I went to work. It was around 6:30 p.m. After I dropped my first delivery off, I was on track to being able to do 8 or so more deliveries that would require me working late into the night. Sometimes, I could get 2 deliveries done per hour, but on average, most deliveries took me around 45 minutes to complete, all the way from driving to the restaurant, then waiting for the food, and of course, driving to the customer's drop-off location. This meant that most nights, I would easily be out until 12 or 1 a.m., sometimes even later. The only restaurants in my area that were open that late were McDonald's, Taco Bell, and this one diner in town. They were all open 24/7 and were huge hot spots for DoorDash at night. I would get constant orders from the late-night stoners who would step out in the middle of the night and wanted a quick and convenient snack. I would say around 11-ish, after I picked up the order for the customer, which was probably my 4th or 5th delivery, the customer messaged me out of the blue, which wasn't unusual. But his message was what got to me. I still remember his name as Angus. He told me that the address might not show up on maps, that he doesn't live at the house, and that he was homeless and just needed an address to use to get the food. He said he thought the house was vacant. I probably should have contacted DoorDash and had them drop the order for me right then and there, but in the moment, I didn't, and I don't know why. I just did it anyways. He told me to call him if I had an issue with finding the place. I thought his request was really weird and strange, but I felt like I had to help him get his food. If he really was a homeless man, how did he have $40 for DoorDash? These are the questions I asked myself, but still, for some reason, my brain convinced me to go through with the order. As I turned down the street of the house he was supposedly on, I quickly realized just how off-grid we were, and the further I went down the road, the more narrow the road became. It seemed like it was getting darker by the second as I continued driving. I started to get an even more weird feeling because, at this point, I was practically in a secluded area. The houses were few and far between, and it was mostly fields and trees. That was when I received another text message from Angus. It read, "Hey, I saw you turn around. You drove past me, silly goose." I pulled into the next driveway, turned around, and texted back saying I didn't see him, but my message wouldn't go through due to the fact that I lost service on my phone. But it wasn't long before I saw a dark figure up ahead, and it had to be him. So I started driving towards him, and he flagged me down. Next thing you know, I handed him his food, and there he was, standing directly at my driver's side window, which made me really uncomfortable. It made me even more uncomfortable that he was wearing some type of elastic ski mask. "What the hell?" I asked if he was Angus, and he said yes. I honestly didn't know if it was really him, but chances were that it was. I didn't even care if it was him though. I just wanted to get out of there as soon as possible. As I was just about to start pulling off and started to roll up the window, he started to pull on the door handle, but luckily I had it locked. He then tried to get his hand in the window, but it was rolled up high enough to where he couldn't do anything like grab me or the lock. That's when I saw he had a syringe in his hand. He made a final attempt at breaking in by trying to smash the glass window open, but it didn't work well. He cracked the window a little bit, but I managed to pull away before he could take another swing, which potentially saved my life. That was my creepy encounter while DoorDashing. I reported it to DoorDash, and they said they would ban him from using the app for good, but I have a feeling that's not going to stop him from trying Uber Eats. Unsure if he hasn't already. Anyways, he should probably be blacklisted entirely from the internet, but I'm not sure that's even possible. Thanks for watching the video. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to watch the latest videos.